Hey guys, I wanted to make a video for anyone who likes building theme parks in games. So if you play Parkitect or Coaster Tycoon or Planet Coaster, this video is for you. So I've been working on this park in Planet Coaster for about 250, 300 hours, and I actually have to keep the resolution kind of low for it to run, so apologies for the pixelization there. But there's some real-life theme park tricks that are used by folks like Disney and Universal that I've used here that I really think it's important to know when building parks, and they really help you out. So the first is that a lot of these parks have an isometric view, like Coaster Tycoon and Parkitect, so you kind of think of things on a 2D perspective. But one thing to keep in mind is not just where you put things, it's kind of the height of the things that you put down. And what I mean by that is that at any given point you want to wonder what people can see when they're in your park. So if we go to sort of eye level here, where the paths kind of coalesce together, you can see that there's 3 levels of height that guests can see at any given point. So we have this ride and the shops, we have this big mountain there, and this big sci-fi contraption in the distance. So if we look on the other side, we can see the same thing in action as well, with some shops, my castle, and a roller coaster in the distance there. So the reason that parks do this in real life is because it invites the people who go to the park to get further into the park. Basically, it allows people who are in the park to see what's in the distance, and it will entice them to move further into the park, spend more money, spend more time in the park. So as you're putting things down, just think of like what guests will see at eye level. I also want to talk about things at the middle of the park. You know what? Actually, that ride's broken right now. So let's focus on cues. This is going to be very important. So a lot of cues that people make are these simple cues that just move through some very basic scenery and get the person to the ride. And these are fine. This is how most cues are. But if we go over to another ride that I have here, you'll see kind of the Disney style of cues, which is to integrate the cue as part of the ride experience. So doing this means theming the cue, making it so that as soon as somebody gets into the cue, it feels like they're already on the ride, or they feel like they've entered into the world of the ride. So we have this very gentle, simple ride here. It's just this spinning contraption where I put some UFOs and lasers and stuff there. So I made sort of a sci-fi ride. But as soon as you step into the queue, you'll see I've done a lot of scenery and theming to make it feel like you're winding through this sci-fi world. You can see that you start inside, then you go outside to this hangar area, and you go back inside and go to the actual ride. So, you know, when you're building queues, think of having a queue winding through different rooms or different environments, and not just having that simple square-like queue that gets people where they need to go. And, oops, looking for the exit here. Another tip is exit through someone trashed this place. Another tip is exit through the gift shop. So the reason rides do this in real life is so you spend more money. So put gift shops and bathrooms at the exit of your rides if you want to have that realistic look. So another thing I wanted to talk about, let's talk about where guests are looking when they're on a ride. This is very important for gentle rides. So looking at this thing I made here, it's kind of a castle journey ride where you go through a courtyard and a castle. Now, I've made a very basic and shitty queue here. It took forever to make those wooden walls, but the queue is nothing to write home about. But the ride itself, you'll notice that if you're on the ride, the guests should have their view always looking either left or right. So as we start the ride, there's nothing really to the right, but you see the main scenery to the left here. So the riders will be looking left. Now they come up to the gate, they would probably turn right to look at that and the castle. They'll probably turn left to look at this fight here. They'll look up at the castle and then right as soon as they go into it. Then when we move past this room, they're looking right, into the next room, looking left. So the reason rides do this in real life is because if there's stuff all around your view, it's just too much. So when you're building a ride, if I just sort of delete the scenery here, you can see as I built the track, I kind of have it winding around areas and leaving these open spaces for me to fill with scenery. So while it's difficult to plan all this, if you just build a ride with a track that winds around certain areas, you'll find that in those areas you can fill things in and it will just seem very realistic when people are on that ride. While we're over here, I want to talk about roller coasters, which is the name of the game here. Is this roller coaster broken down? I'm not sure. But we'll talk about roller coasters. Oh, here it is. So with roller coasters, one thing to keep in mind is the vast majority of roller coasters have a single lift hill. A lot of modern roller coasters have new crazy configurations for this. I'll just speed it up so we get there. But in general, when building a roller coaster, you want to stay with a single lift hill. A couple roller coasters can have more than that, but if you're going for a realistic design, you want it to just have that single lift that will take it over all the inversions and all the ups and downs. That gives it a much more realistic look. So whenever you're building roller coasters, if you just stick with one large drop, chances are it will look better. Let's also look at a roller coaster that I think turned out quite realistic. So I'm still working on the queue. I haven't totally finished everything. It's kind of dark in here. But the idea with this is I wanted to tell a story with a roller coaster. This is something that Disney does insanely well. And with this story, the idea was you're alien rebels who are fighting like space cops or whatever. So first, the roller coaster goes through this kind of shanty, shitty area that gives us some ideas of the story where there's people and there's aliens fighting these space cops. The roller coaster then goes through the police headquarters where we see on both sides you're surrounded by cells with aliens in it, so maybe you've been captured. Then if we go on to the next room, you'll see that there's a couple aliens working at a little computer here, and with the help of a very simple trigger, we make it seem like they hacked the computer and you're able to escape. Now with our first descent here, you're in this wild, sort of above the clouds escape where there's people shooting at you, where there's a helicopter, and overall it's a very exciting section that I was able to make with just some simple parts and lots of fog machines. Now I haven't finished this roller coaster yet, but it descends through the fog, and what I'm going to have happen here is it's kind of going to be like the outside of a building, like a front facade, and through here we're going to see a lot of doors and things like that. I love this section because it loops around for the first section. This is kind of the wild escape section where you're running from the space cops. Over here I'll probably have the space cops like shooting aliens or fighting them. Then we have this little tiny secret looking opening here. Let's see if we can't get that to open. Okay, here we go. Where you go in, there's pipes and tubes, and now you're kind of in a factory setting where the aliens are building things to fight back. And with the help of a little trigger to turn lights on, which again will pull the gaze of the riders, we see that the aliens are working on this giant dog robot there. You run through this incinerator. Reminds me of Terminator 2, kind of, where, all the stuff from the previous room goes. And then finally we get to the final section where you see the aliens are fighting back using that big dog robot you saw, and the passengers get to ride through this in a really fun way. So it sort of builds to that crescendo. So when you're building roller coasters, if you want them to be realistic in some of the Disney parks, specifically if they're going to tell a story, it's difficult to pre-plan all of that. So I want to give you some tips on just how to build the coaster and then build the scenery around it. So if we delete some of my scenery, I didn't mean to delete that one right there. Let's try this one more time. If we delete the scenery that I have here and we look just at the track. Now when you're building this, you might not have, I do have to delete that. You might not have a full clear view of what you're going to do, But if you start off with a level, slow section that again winds around, leaves some open room before going into descent section, and then ending with a slow section, again with those wide turns to put scenery, you can generally come up with some really cool stuff there. So you don't need to know all of this when you're building the roller coaster, but if you build the roller coaster with some simple, slow parts at the beginning and the end, it will look a lot better. Finally, I want to talk about the center of the park, whether it's a castle or... Oh, I just love how I did this. 1 second. Oh, I love that. So for this park, I wanted a big geometric shape, and I chose sort of this Louvre-looking triangle. And the reason you put a big thing at the center of the park is because wherever the guests are, they can orient themselves to that thing in the center. So whether you're in the sci-fi land, if you're at the beginning of the park, if you're at the top of this roller coaster here, even the top of the biggest coaster here, wherever your guests are, they can orient themselves and figure out where they want to go next. This is something that theme parks use in real life. It's very common to see a castle or a big ride at the center. So those are just a few tips that I have for you guys. I'm very passionate about theme park building games, whether you play Planet Coaster, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Parkitect, whatever. These are just a few tips to keep in mind from someone who's been doing this for about 20 some years and who really loves the philosophy and techniques behind this. So let me know if that's helpful to you. I would love to hear what your tips are in the comments and what you do to make your park seem realistic and cool. And I'm going to go ahead and link this park on Steam so that you can download it and explore it, at your leisure. So I've been kind of busy at work this month, guys, so I didn't have a lot of time for a video, but I have a new large video coming up in about a month, so stay tuned for that, and let me know what you think in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks. Bye.